Welcome back, guys. This is Alex Himes here with the Ruckus, and today I have a good buddy of mine, Jacob Hill, on the show. How's it going, Jacob?
It's good. It's good.
It's always good, apparently, especially here in really sunny Lexington. Jokes. Anyway, we're jumping right into today's show, and we're going to talk about going with the NFL. And right now, we got to talk about Johnny Manziel and Colin Kaepernick because it's all over the news. We see these unfair comparisons being made of Johnny Manziel to Colin Kaepernick, and I'm sitting here thinking, what the hell is running through people's minds? Like, how can you compare a guy who went to the Super Bowl, led his team, to a guy who fumed out in the league and is now trying to get himself back on track? I mean, do you think that these comparisons are valid?
No, it's just there's nothing to talk about. Like this is what the NFL does. Like NFL, no matter what, there's really no off season. Like there's always news, and the best way to make news is compare to like they do this every year. The draft is a big like they'll have some guy with a bong picture come up, or it's just a way of NFL staying relevant. And I don't think Colin Kaepernick has proven that he was a good quarterback one time. I mean, he might not be where he was then, but Johnny Manziel, he threw the same amount of interceptions and touchdowns one season, so it's completely different. Um, I mean, for Johnny Manziel though, credit to him for like coming out and saying that the comparison was unfair. That's the first step in the right path to showing that like he has some self-realization, at least. But for me, the whole thing is just a way the NFL can stay relevant.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Like, how, just really from a fundamental standpoint, how the hell can you compare a guy who went to a Super Bowl, was considered a great QB for years, and was sought after, and the only reason now he's not is because he takes a political stance and he got blackballed by the league. Here's Johnny Manziel, who was given every opportunity, taken high in the draft, went to a team who clearly needed a QB, was looked at as quote unquote the savior almost, and fumed out, realized that he had drug problems and other external factors, mental health problems, and credit to him for getting it all figured out, and he now looks like an NFL prospect again. But man, how the hell are you going to compare those two? There's like nothing there whatsoever. It doesn't make sense. Like, for someone to legitimately try and make a comparison of Johnny Manziel to Colin Kaepernick is like me comparing an apple to a tomato. There's like nothing fundamentally there.
The only thing that the same is they both play the same position.
Yep.
It's like apples can be red and so can tomatoes, but that's it.
Was Kaepernick ever arrested for drug stuff? Did he ever get into a domestic violence issue? No. The only thing he ever had to go on his record is being screwed by the NFL for taking a stand, of which was for the right reasons. He utilized his platform like any smart athlete would, and is now starting a trend across like other leagues. We see how NBA players are stepping up and now aren't going to shut up and dribble. Like, this guy is on another level. And honestly, credit to Johnny Manziel for what he's done. But man, like really, there's nothing there. And like you said, credit to him also for going out on Twitter, making it known that these comparisons are complete hogwash and whatnot. But seriously, the NFL needs to get a grip. And also the analysts need to.
Well, yeah, like it's just clickbait at the end of the day. Like, I mean, like I said, congrats to Johnny Manziel for being like sober. Like he's married, I guess now. Like has his stuff together. But at the end of the day, like we're not going to compare someone who had everything they needed to be good, and they didn't. Like, granted, you're in Cleveland, hard to win there, but you can still be a normal person at the end of the day.
I mean, whoa. I mean, in Cleveland, you can't really be a normal person.
Well, that's true, but like, I mean, I've heard from like players in the Browns organization, like they still keep up with Johnny Manziel, and like I know Von Miller, like they're still in close contact, and he said that this seems legit this time, but he's never going to get back to being like he might be a starter, but I don't think he'll do what Colin Kaepernick did of going to a Super Bowl.
Oh, hell no. Absolutely not. Anyone that thinks Manziel, at least at this point, granted with what we've seen and where he's going, he's on an upward trajectory. Oh man, I can't even speak. And this guy, yeah, words are hard. But yeah, like he's on an upward trajectory. He's doing well. He's getting himself clean, sober, working on his mental health stuff. And he's going to try and make an NFL comeback, which I think just because of who he is, and honestly, like these other analysts have said, it's a race thing. Yeah, he'll end up getting back in the NFL in some way, shape, or form. It's unfair, but it's the truth of the situation.
Well, and like regardless if you hate Colin Kaepernick or you don't agree with what he stands for, you have to realize what he did in San Francisco changed football. Like he was like a newer version of Mike Vick. You didn't know, like, you couldn't just contain the pass. You couldn't just contain him running. It was completely different. If you change the way defensive coordinators go about a game, like, you've put your mark on football forever. Yeah. So, I mean, Johnny Manziel, the only thing he's done is sold the infamous Brown jersey with all the quarterbacks on it. That's not a knock at him. It's just not fair to compare them at all.
Nah. Especially also, potentially him giving players stuff that he shouldn't, drugs, paraphernalia, anything like that. I mean, he did some stuff in Cleveland, but definitely not the best.
Yeah, definitely. And it just comes back to the NFL is the best PR-wise of staying relevant. Like, the NFL is, like, the NBA offseason, you have the draft, and then after the draft, it's kind of dead for a little bit. MLB is completely dead until the season starts in spring training. The NFL is so good at making these headlines. Like, it might not even come from the NFL, but people are so infatuated with the NFL that they can make these comparisons, and people will just keep going on and on and on about it. So I think it's more of people just overreacting to it.
There's nothing else to talk about at this time with the NFL. Like, you got to make drama out of something.
Well, yeah, and like with the whole Odell sitting out, like granted, Odell is unhappy in New York, and I think he will eventually be in New York because there's no way they're just going to let him slip through their fingers.
No matter who or what the situation is with Odell Beckham Jr., that talent basically screams, pay me, give him the money, and no matter what you take with it, you have it. You lock him down. It's like how I feel the same way about him as I do Le'Veon Bell. The talent is there. You know what you have, and honestly, you don't even know the full potential of it yet because you're still at the beginning. Put him around another couple great centerpieces, you make him that much better. Give him the money that he wants within the means. He's not going to be the top paid player in the NFL, and this is another discussion for another time. Yeah. But you're a wide receiver. Anytime that you consider yourself worth more than a guy like Tom Brady, you are a lunatic, or at least somewhat real with your aspirations of trying to make millions. But either way, the guy is going to command top dollar, and he's going to get paid.
Well, yeah, and he deserves it. But it just comes back to the end of the day that the NFL it doesn't matter if they're in the Super Bowl or if they're weeks away from the draft. Like, they will always find a way for their news to get out and it be controversial at the most. Yeah. Like, there's never just like, oh, like, this guy, he retired in the day, whatever. Like, they'll put out multiple things at once. So you have your good stories, you have your bad, and then they have the main topic, which is this Johnny Manziel, Colin Kaepernick thing. Like, the Odell news might come second to this comparison, but at the end of the day, this comparison doesn't even matter.
Yeah, they're still going to come up with news. I mean, we see this in all other types of leagues in the United States, but we'll turn over to the NBA now because Skip Bayless is causing a ruckus of his own and causing even more drama now because he's gone out on Twitter and tweeted that if the Jazz were in the East, they would go to the finals. All right? Now, I don't know about you, but let's point out the obvious. One, their record is 42 and 34, I think it was.
The Jazz?
Yeah, 42 and 34 or 33, which leaves them being in 6th place in the East.
42 and 32, and they're 8th in the West.
Okay, so if their record translates in the East, they'd be 6th in the East right now, and they still would not go to the finals. I don't know what Skip Bayless is drinking, or if since he left,
they'd be playing Cleveland first round.
Yeah, like, realistically, like, what are you saying? I mean, honestly, like, since he left First Take, maybe he's been going back, and now that things are recreational in California, he's smoking the weed and whatnot.
Stay off the weed.
I mean, yeah, he needs Stephen A. to keep telling him that, because clearly he's thinking something's off with them, because anyone who actually and genuinely believes that if the Jazz were in the Eastern Conference that they could get to the finals, like, going back to the NFL thing, they're a lunatic. I mean, think about it. Think about all the other teams in the Eastern Conference that they'd have to get through, and think about the matchups they would have. You shut down Donovan Mitchell in a game, you're most likely going to beat the Jazz just because, although they're a great defensive team, their offense runs solely through him. We see that with how they pushed the Spurs into double OT in that game, how he was the guy to push them into double OT. Shut him down.
Plus, you're putting a lot of stock into a rookie. Like Rudy Gobert, like, I understand, defensive presence, but he's not scoring a lot. And, like, if he has to bang it with somebody inside, like Tristan Thompson, not saying Tristan Thompson's like this all-star defender, but he's a big body enough to disrupt him. And then We're not even mentioning the GOAT. LeBron James is not going to lose to a rookie. It's just not going to happen. There needs to be another superstar to beat LeBron James first round.
No, I agree. I mean, you take out Gordon Hayward and you put in Donovan Mitchell. Yeah, that's a great, definitely with what the Jazz were going through to find Mitchell and be in the position they were in to have this guy play this well, great. But to think that losing Gordon Hayward and adding Donovan Mitchell, if they were in the East, putting them in the finals, that doesn't make sense.
I don't even know if the Jazz would beat Philly. Like the top four teams in the East, Toronto, Boston, Cleveland, Philly, I don't think they get out of that.
No, but every one of those is a mismatch for them. With the Celtics can defend from almost any position, and if you keep watching their games, they've had so many players out, and yet each night a new guy steps in, whether it be Morris, Rozier, or any of these other guys. They step up and they take the scoring load and they kill these other teams because these teams don't know how to defend these guys because they're not starter players, yet they're playing the same way that they would if they had all their starters. Look at the Raptors. You know what? I'm gonna say this. When it comes playoff time, we'll see how good the Raptors are. You know, exactly. We've seen that, but their system has definitely changed, and I got to get.
They have a bench for the first time in ever. Man, they might have one of the most best rookies that's gone under the radar. OG is so good,
and Van Fleet too, man. Raw, man.
But I mean, again, Toronto, they've had really good seasons, but second round, they just don't know what to do at all. DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry can just go cold.
They go cold and they go iso ball too much. They rely on those two guys.
Now, DeMar DeRozan, though, this year has shown that he's taken it up another level. He's gotten the 3-point. He's gotten the playmaking. And he's a huge shooting guard. Ginormous. He's a force for sure. Yeah, and I just don't know how Skip Bayless can overlook 4 teams that I think maybe would sweep the Jazz, if not have a gentleman's sweep 4-1.
No, I agree with you. I think I think this gentleman's sweep is more realistic because each one of those teams, they're bound to win at least one game in Utah. I got to give the Utah fans credit. If there's one stadium I'd love to go see a game in, it would be in Utah, just because you hear all the great things about the Jazz fans, the environment, and how team-oriented they are and just how good of fans they are. The atmosphere is amazing. I'd love to be there and see that series. I'd love to see them beat LeBron in the playoffs. Trust me, if anyone can come up and beat LeBron in the playoffs, I'd love to see it. But there is no way, shape, or form that if the Jazz were in the Eastern Conference, they could come out of that alive. It's too rough of a road for them. It's just way too rough.
It is. And the thing is it's more than likely going to happen that they're going to play Houston first round. And that's probably a sweep.
Probably.
It should be. I mean, Houston could just take a game off, relax a little bit, but at the end of the day, we're putting a lot of stock into Donovan Mitchell, and granted, great year, fantastic year, but playoffs are a whole different animal. You're seeing the same team over and over
and you build, and they know your system. They get used to what you're doing and whatnot. I mean, it's crazy. So, we see how Skip Bayless is talking about how the Jazz could potentially go far in the Eastern Conference. But let's focus on Donovan Mitchell at this point. We got to talk about the Rookie of the Year, and this discussion is going to get heated between us. I already know it is. So, do you think? Actually, no. I'll put it like this: who do you think should win Rookie of the Year?
It's got to be Ben Simmons. It's got to be.
No, it shouldn't be. It should be Donovan Mitchell, buddy. It should be Donovan Mitchell. You know why? Because Donovan Mitchell is a pure rookie. Ben Simmons, albeit, is having a marvelous rookie year. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Ben Simmons. The great future for Philadelphia is right ahead of them. It's right. They're knocking on the door, especially now that they're in the playoffs and being the 4th seed in the East. These guys are going to be a force to reckon with for years to come. But no way, shape, or form should Ben Simmons get Rookie of the Year. The man had a year to play. Well, no, not play. He had a year with all of the veterans, all of the guys at the NBA level to teach him the fundamentals, the little nuances of the game, just everything that you don't know, that little missing step between college and NBA. He got a year to literally learn all of that stuff and be around the team, get to know the system, and understand how they're working. Donovan Mitchell came in fresh off of being in Louisville and has been destroying NBA teams, burst on the scene with that 36-point game and has been proving his value and the fact that everyone undervalued this kid going into the draft, especially
No, because he got traded. He got traded. He was originally supposed to be on the Nuggets and got traded.
Yeah, but he was at the 15th pick.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have been that low. Look at all the other guys that were selected ahead of him. Would you rather have De'Aaron Fox or would you rather have...
Oh, yeah, you'd rather have Donovan Mitchell right now, for sure.
Would you rather have Lonzo Ball or
Donovan Mitchell. And, like, the thing is, yeah, if Ben Simmons played last year full off, that would have been Rookie of the Year over Malcolm Brogdon. No one can disagree with that. Ben Simmons, the stuff he does is super impressive. The way he, like, I think the thing with Ben Simmons has over Donovan Mitchell, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying, is he understands the game a lot easier now. Like, it just comes easy to him. Like, you see some of the passes he throws, and it's just ridiculous. And it helps when you have Joel Embiid on your team.
Yeah, man. When you have a year to get used to all the guys that you're going to be playing with who are high talent players, you get to understand them from a basketball standpoint, from a personal standpoint. You get to understand the coaching staff from a basketball standpoint and personal standpoint. It's just all an advantage for Ben Simmons. I think that giving him the Rookie of the Year is unfair. I honestly think the NBA needs to update these rules.
Well, they've flip-flopped. They've flip-flopped so much. They've gone where, okay, it's just your first year. And then they've gone back to, well, if you were hurt one year, now you can win it. Because they did it with Blake Griffin. Yep. He won it after his second year. Nerlens that year that he got hurt his rookie year, came back, and he maybe should have been in the spot, but they didn't even let him.
You're telling me Mark Carter-Williams didn't deserve that?
No, I'm saying it's just like Nerlens Noel wasn't even allowed to be considered because they implemented the rule.
Well, then they implemented a rule, but they haven't been strict to it. They need to update the rules about the Rookie of the Year voting at minimum.
Well, the thing that I think the NBA is doing is, okay, who's going to get the most headlines for Rookie of the Year? Like, if Ben Simmons wasn't a rookie, like, the stuff he's doing, yeah, it's impressive, but would it be as highly, like, viewed or analyzed if this wasn't his, like, first year? Like, if he was doing this his second year, it'd still be, like...
But it is his second year.
Well, I know, but I'm saying, like, if it was his second year, actually, like, if he had 2 years of playing a full season, we'd look at it as more of a progression rather than a breakout.
But it's still unfair to classify him with the guys that have come in from this draft class and are owning and killing the NBA scene right now. Like, I just genuinely think it's unfair. I happen to agree with Charles Barkley, who says that these guys shouldn't be considered. The NBA needs to update the rules about who can be considered for Rookie of the Year. If you are,
or they just need to make it definite. Like, they need to just come out and say, all right, this is the rule. We're going with it the rest of the way now. Instead of being like, well, this year, like, this has been Simmons' year, so, like,
you can't make exceptions.
Yeah, and they make exceptions for people that they think they're going to make a lot of money off of in coming years.
Welcome to the NBA.
Yeah, and that's why the NBA their salaries are like that. I mean,
they can afford to do it.
But, I mean, if we're just going off of what's going on right now, Ben Simmons has to be Rookie of the Year. The stuff that if he ever gets a jump shot, everyone's going to be terrified. They'll be terrified if he ever gets a jump shot.
See, this is where I think my argument will diverge a little bit. I agree that what Ben Simmons is doing is amazing, and we haven't seen this in a while, right? But Donovan Mitchell took a Jazz team that everyone predicted to not be in the playoffs to take a real nosedive after Gordon Hayward, pushed them into the playoffs. They're sitting at the 8th seed. This winning streak that I don't know if they're still on it, but they were on it for so long. It was 13 games. They were the NBA's hottest team, and he's been killing it, averaging over 20 points per game. I get Ben Simmons is doing his triple-doubles all year. He can continue doing this and show us more probably next year. We'll probably get voted most improved player next year if he does do this on a continuous trajectory upward. But still, man, this guy Mitchell is taking a Jazz team that no one predicted to be decent or good, period.
No, Donovan Mitchell overlooked, definitely. I mean, he was always great in Louisville, and, like, he keeps showing everyone what he can do. But you got to put it into the fact of the playmaking of Ben Simmons. Like, if Donovan Mitchell takes his step, yeah, and the thing that makes great NBA players great is they take that next leap forward. Like, LeBron could never, like, his first 5 years wasn't the best shooter. Then he started shooting threes, and then you're like, oh, man, this guy is incredible. Kevin Durant started playing defense. That's that next step. If Giannis starts shooting a little better, like, just enough to make someone come out on the wing and he pump fakes drives, it's over. Like, he might be in this GOAT conversation of Giannis can just at least make someone guarding on the perimeter. Like last night, he went 3 for 4 from 3. That's got to terrify whoever's got to see the Bucks in the playoffs, which is Boston right now, which is not favorable.
No, I'm not afraid of the Bucks if the Celtics play them in the playoffs.
No, I mean, no, if you're all healthy, but the fact that if Giannis can just start shooting enough to where someone has to come out and close him and he can just blow by you, that's terrifying. That's an extra 10 points for him. But that whole thing with Donovan Mitchell is if he takes that next step in playmaking, and then we'll have another conversation.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt that eloquent speech about how Donovan Mitchell should be Rookie of the Year and pointing out why I'm right. But we just got breaking news, that the Giants are willing to listen to offers for Odell Beckham Jr. and want at least a first-round pick.
See, I thought they fired Ben McAdoo. Why are they still trying to shoot themselves in the foot? Like, Odell, I used to think, this was on my bad too, that Julio Jones was the best receiver in the league. And granted, Julio is great, but Odell is just special. Like, he's probably the best player in the NFL if you're not considering quarterbacks.
Or at least elite quarterbacks.
Yeah, like, he's better than a lot of quarterbacks, but like when you're talking like top 10 quarterbacks, those are obviously the most valuable to any franchise. I just don't understand New York's mindset of, you have this, like, you could have a subpar quarterback and he'll at least get you to a playoff with just Odell. Like, don't let him go. And I guarantee you, Bill Belichick's just sitting there wondering what he can give up to get him. Or I saw where Jarvis Landry's just tweeting at him like, yo, let's go back to the LSU days. Can you imagine Josh Gordon, Odell, and Jarvis Landry? That is terrifying. I know they're in Cleveland, but still, like, you could have Tyrod there, and that's fine.
You just need an average QB to throw to these guys. Those guys are, like, they're QBs that make the plays for his receivers. He's the type of dude that you chuck it in the air, he'll make the play to get it.
And he's undersized and still somehow gets it, which is crazy. Just crazy athlete. And the whole thing with Odell is that video came out of him, like, that's just overreacting. Like, if you're going to say that people in the NFL don't smoke weed and they shouldn't, you're wrong. Like, these guys are getting destroyed week in, week out.
I honestly don't think that the video should have any bearing on his contract. Don't get me wrong. It's stupid. Yeah, it's genuinely stupid that you get caught doing it. But us as individuals understand that they have their own personal lives, and that to scrutinize an athlete for being caught on camera during his private time in a room with someone that we don't know what he's doing with, period, but he's in a room with someone and it's assumed to be private, who the hell has the right to judge what he's doing? Like, honestly, unless this dude is doing something ridiculous like meth or something that's...
If he is just being like a nuisance to society, then it's an issue. But if he's just...
This dude's doing it on his own.
Yeah.
This is his own time.
And he's not doing it during the season either. So it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It does not matter. Odell, if this is what the Giants are shopping him for, that's you've messed up. That's a very idiotic thing to let the best wide receiver in the league just go through your fingers. I saw where they wanted a first-round pick. Who are you going to replace for Odell?
This is a guy that has a Randy Moss impact on any team. Has the feet of a soccer player while playing football at an elite level. Like, you don't get a guy with that talent often, and we know that because the Giants were literally carried by Odell in most of the seasons that he's been healthy. Like,
and I know that the health issue is a concern, but it really shouldn't be. Like, yeah, he broke his ankle this year, but like it's not a tendon, it's not an ACL, it's not anything that's reoccurring. Like an ankle injury, you break it. I mean, I'm sure it'll nag a little bit, but it's not a muscle or anything. As long as he's smart about his recovery, then it's fine.
And this guy's one of the healthiest dudes in the NFL. Being real, like, look at his figure. And we hear all the things about, diet and all these other things that NFL players do. He's in great shape and keeping himself there consistently.
And he's in his prime. Like, these next 3 years of Odell will be his best 3 years. And you're not going to capitalize on his best 3 years.
Man, watch the Patriots make a trade for this man. Well,
he's got 1 year on his contract. No one signed. Like, I guarantee Bill Belichick might not make a trade. But as soon as that contract's done, you best believe that the Patriots are going to have some sort of say.
Dude, if the Pats were willing to give all that money to Stephon Gilmore and people were like, what the hell are the Pats doing? Like, what do they see? We saw it in the playoffs this year with Gilmore blocking that catch, which he did years back in Buffalo. This guy will have that type of impact, and we can see that just outright. Like Bill Belichick will turn Odell Beckham Jr. from the player he is, if he goes to the Patriots and pairs with Tom Brady, just in that system, period, he'll be a guy that can average above 2,000 yards per year.
And the thing is like he's putting up crazy numbers with Eli. Like Eli at one point was great. He's a Tom Brady killer. Yeah, and he's dwindling, and like Odell is still doing crazy stuff. Like he had that little spree of like where he kicked the goalpost and he was going like he had like a 3 or 4 game like spree where he wasn't doing too hot, and then he came back and it was just crazy. Like the stuff
people overblow that stuff too. Honestly, like I hate it because athletes by definition are in the business because of their ability. So if you see a guy who gets pissed off because he screws up a play and happens to kick a goalpost and it happens to hit him in the head, which is funny on its own, why the hell are you mad? You want a guy that expresses his emotions.
It shows that he cares. Yeah. Like he's upset that he's not putting the numbers he expects. That's the thing. Like I know they're like it was like when Cam Newton lost in the Super Bowl and he had that press conference and you could hear behind him the Denver Broncos talking about how they shut down Cam Newton and like how like everything worked. Like, what do you expect from him? You expect him to come out and be like, "Oh, they played a great game"? No, like if you are a competitor and you are listening to a team that just beat you in the Super Bowl, you were supposed to win the Super Bowl the entire time. You are not going to have like a good rapport with the reporters asking you what you could have done better.
Yeah, especially when they're going to poke and prod at you in every way, shape, or form. Like nitpick. Bring up all the mistakes that you made during the game. Oh, come on, man. Like, you expect an athlete to keep their cool on that.
Cam Newton was like an MVP candidate. Like, he was looked at as the person who was going to get Carolina their championship. Yep. And it didn't happen. And it's not, like, solely on him. But, like, don't sit there. Like, I remember Stephen A. was like, you get paid for this. Why aren't you doing it? Like, Stephen A., you've never been in a Super Bowl setting where, like, you were supposed to win by, like, pretty easily and you didn't, and then the people behind you that beat you are talking about how they shut you down. Like you're not like that's just not a normal situation to be in.
Yeah, man. And like the other thing that I don't appreciate is that, you know, it goes off of kind of what you're saying. Like Stephen A. hasn't been in that situation, so he can't comment on it from a first person perspective. He can only comment on it from what he's seen in players past and how they handled it. Man, you know how hard it is to teach class to someone in a situation when they just lost a Super Bowl, or they just went down with an injury, or they just screwed up a major play that could have changed their season? You got to understand, these guys are also young. They're still trying to figure it out.
They've put a whole year of their life into this, and it all came down to one game. And they like we don't understand the amount of like effort and work and hours they've put in. Like none of us, like we have an idea, but we don't know like the psychological toll, the physical toll. We have no idea.
And we take all of their physical talents and their attributes for granted and their playmaking ability for granted. That's why I genuinely hate what the fantasy stuff for NFL has done to the look of players in the NFL period. People look at them as commodities. People look at them as a dollar figure in statistics as opposed to realizing this is a dude who's putting it out all on the line every game trying to win these games. And yeah, they have emotions. Let them express it. That's what they're supposed to do, is express the emotion.
Yeah, and I mean, I just don't understand how we can sit here and say, well, you're a professional, conduct yourself like one. They're professionals in this, like, yes, they're professional athletes. We're not trying to make them out to be like professional, like public speakers. Like, they should be able to show emotions. And like, to me, if you're upset after a Super Bowl loss, that shows me that you're like, genuinely care. Like it would be one thing if he went up there and was like, oh, they played a great game, congrats to them. Like no, like I'd rather have someone that's pissed off and doesn't want to talk to anyone. Like that shows me that like you are invested. Yeah. And I just don't like that. We don't like when people get emotionally invested, but if they're not emotionally invested, we're like, what's wrong?
Dude, it's a double standard. That's the other thing. Yeah, you know, like the double standard of how, you know, we have players who either show emotion or don't, and no matter where they lie on the spectrum, everyone gets criticized. Either you show emotion and you get criticized, or you don't show any emotion and people look at you like, how are you not unhappy? How are you not sad? What's going on with you? What's wrong?
And it's the same as like basketball. Like LeBron is probably the most famous person in the world at this point. Everything he does gets put on such a higher standard because everything he does is so like everything is so calculated, all his move, and he knows it has to be.
Yeah.
Because if he makes one wrong move, he's on ESPN First Take next morning.
He is never. I agree with Stephen A. when he says that LeBron only lets out what he wants in the media, and everything else he's figured out how to hold behind. But I also want to say that it takes a guy who's done very little in terms of doing wrong or things that don't want to get out to the media to be able to have that control and that power.
Yeah. And like with the whole shut up and dribble thing, like you've got to understand who you're coming at. Like LeBron is maybe the most influential athlete of all time. And like with them saying just shut up and dribble, like they have to know
At least
the
in this era.
Yeah.
This era.
Yeah, like LeBron James is definitely like anything he says basically goes for the NBA. Like he's the gold standard of maybe all athletes.
Because he's never done anything wrong. He's never been caught doing anything wrong. Never been cited for doing anything wrong.
Family man, like
Yeah, like everything that people would want in a sports figure, all the boxes are checked. And to hold these guys to double standards, it's just blasphemy to me.
But like I feel like NFL players get such a bad rap comparatively to most sports.
They do.
Because it's like, oh, like have you ever heard the saying like you have to have a thug to win? Like no, you just need like defensively, you just have to like have someone who's hard nosed and it's not gonna like if your player gets hit by someone else, they're gonna go and get them back. But it's not a matter of like, oh, this guy's a thug. It's a matter of like having your players back, and then at the end of the day, they still get pissed about that.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. The NFL is a wild place. The NBA is a wild place. Everyone, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in to today's show. I'm glad that my buddy Jacob was able to come on. Thanks for coming on, Jacob.
Yeah, appreciate it.
We'll be calling. Yeah, no problem, dude. We'll be doing another episode next week. Jacob will be back in-house to cause another ruckus with us. Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. Have a wonderful week.